The book was better. It's the common maxim you hear coming out of whatever blockbuster was playing in the theatre. This is especially true in decades past, before Marvel and Star Wars were the hottest properties of the summer season. A lot of major 90s blockbusters, or films that attempted to be such, were based off of source material. Fitting, considering the first of its kind, Jaws, came from similar stock. But in the process of distilling 500 to 1,000 pages into a 2-hour crowd pleaser, oftentimes characters and even entire plots require excision. In fact, some adaptations benefit from their distillation of distinct themes, and as a result, sometimes characters even get expanded upon. We've tried to avoid the big name examples for this list, save for 2, but there's no shortage of novels that mostly are in tune with the director's vision except the end. Then there are other works that live beyond the adaptation, novels that carry the franchise's characters further than the screen, only to have them meet their eventual brutal death. Here are the ways some characters you might remember fondly were cruelly brutalised elsewhere in media. I am Kirsten from What Culture, and these are 10 film characters who suffered horrendous fates in other media. Number 10. Luther Whitney. Absolute Power is the kind of absurd, high-concept thriller that used to be made in the 70s, but its plot and era render it much less believable. It wouldn't be out of left field post-Watergate for a movie to feature a president trying to cover up a murder, stymied only by the cat burglar who witnessed the death. But in the days of Whitewater being largely dismissed, the plot rang false. Odd, considering David Baldacci's novel was a huge success, enough for Columbia Pictures to secure the rights for $5 million. And though an old pro like Eastwood capably handles the action and delivers a reflective performance too good for the material, that doesn't forgive the absurdity afoot. Part of that may have been Eastwood's own fault, who liked the novel but felt that all the interesting characters were killed off too early. Eastwood's aging thief Luther Whitney, the film's protagonist, died fairly early in the book, presumably more grounded in reality, where a simple burglar would be done away with. He demanded William Goldman change the story so that everyone the audience likes doesn't get killed off, effectively neutering any shock value or thrills the film may have offered, instead of turning in a by-the-numbers thriller with a ludicrous hook. Number 9. Captain Stephen Hiller, Independence Day. For reasons still beyond understanding, people hold a soft spot for Independence Day's soft-serve patriotism and big explosions. Alas, anyone at the age of reason when it was released saw it as the hollow, cliche-riddled mess that cynically preyed on the public's willingness to suspend disbelief. Nevertheless, it was a huge hit and led to director Roland Emmerich turning it into an Irwin Allen type, making spectacles full of disasters and big stars gawking at explosions. Even his failures like the much-maligned Godzilla remake and 2012 managed to earn their money back and then some. After Stonewall failed to garner much attention, Emmerich went back to his roots with Independence Day: Resurgence. Most of the cast returned. The only holdout was Will Smith, who played Captain Stephen Hiller and bravely piloted the alien ship. So they just outright killed him. And they didn't kill him heroically, nor did he die of natural causes in fact. His death is not really mentioned in the film, despite his stepson being one of the lead characters. If you sift through the ad campaign, you'll find video of a news report with the headline, "Alien Tech Malfunction Kills Colonel Hiller." Smith was bummed to learn that they killed him in small text in a viral ad. But he did miss the good news, they promoted him first. Number 8. Jack Crow, Vampires. John Carpenter's Vampires may not be the director's best work, but it's far from his worst. Taken from ideas the director had and John Steakley's novel called Vampires, Carpenter is clearly having a blast mixing and matching his two favourite genres in ways more unapologetic than he had before. There had been elements of westerns in Carpenter's horror, but never was there such a clear link. James Woods stars in the last role to genuinely use the actor in any intimidating way. He's Jack Crow, the no-nonsense vampire hunter who leads a troop of soldiers that clear out nests in the New Mexico desert. It's the kind of knowing, winking masculinity that would be toxic if it didn't have a sense of humour about itself. Crow may be set up as a Woodsian character, constantly being a wise ass, but he spent his time fighting the Ant War with the second-in-command Felix on other planets. Stakely's armour is a novel much like Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, with giant alien bugs fighting against soldiers in robot exoskeletons. The two battled through different planets only to join up to fight the undead. Crow survived only to be killed halfway through the novel by the lead vampire. His undead form is later taken out by Felix while trying to assassinate the Pope. Number 7. Matt Hooper, Jaws. Peter Benchley's hit novel Jaws served as the basis for one of the greatest films of all time, and the first legitimate summer blockbuster. But anyone who's actually read it knows that it's awful. The fact that its film adaptation is such a masterpiece is proof positive that the very integral process of streamlining in adaptation works. The novel is clunky, poorly written, filled with subplots that overstuff the story, including an absurd corruption scandal involving the mayor and the mafia. It's just a mess that, to make matters worse, ends with one of the most unsatisfying climaxes in any novel. The shark, approaching a stranded Sheriff Brody, just succumbs to its wounds and dies. However ludicrous that explosion at the end of the film is, there's no question it gets your heart racing. One of the major changes to the novel was in the character of Matt Hooper, who is still very much written as Richard Dreyfuss plays him. Hooper is a wealthy brat, but it's Dreyfuss's quirky charm that makes us like and side with him. But Hooper in the novel possesses none of Dreyfuss's redeeming qualities. He's insufferable, and to make matters worse, he has an affair with Sheriff Brody's wife, which the sheriff kind of knows about when he fails to save Hooper from the cage. Number 6. Toad, American Graffiti. Part of what made American Graffiti hit home was its brutal postscript, which no one saw coming. The entire film takes place over the course of one night before Kurt, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and Steve, played by Ron Howard, are set to leave town for college. By the film's end, everyone's arcs have completed. Then, as Kurt boards the plane, it's revealed in silence that he became a writer in Canada, Steve an insurance agent in California, and Toad, played by Charles Martin Smith, is reported MIA in Vietnam, and Paul Lematt's racer is killed by a drunk driver. The brutal reality of those words after the seemingly harmless night of fun we just spent with them drops like a ton of bricks before the needle hits and the Beach Boys viciously jerk you out of it, leaving you completely discombobulated. If you were hoping the sequel retconned that bleak ending, you're in for devastation. Terry manages to screw up trying to wound himself in Vietnam, but instead he deserts, leaving everyone to believe he's dead. Paul Lematt's roadster dies, as promised. He's last seen with his lights going down a dark highway, and the leader of the Pharaohs gang is hit by sniper fire in Rice Paddy. It wouldn't be much of a leap to assume that Platoon was American Graffiti 3. Number 5. Dudley Smith and Leland Buzz Meeks, LA Confidential. Curtis Hanson's masterful adaptation of James Ellroy's novel is another example of streamlining done skillfully, removing subplots from a nearly 1,000-page book. There were several never even considered to be part of the film. Adapting Ellroy's novel was made even more difficult as it was intended as a standalone film, not the third in a 4-part series as the novel was. Opening with the Black Dahlia and concluding with White Jazz, Ellroy's LA Quartet offers an alternative history to the city spanning over 2 decades from the late 40s to the early 60s. By the time LA Confidential was written, James Cromwell's Dudley Smith was long established as a dirty cop. The film treats his reveal as the villain as a twist, but Dudley actually survives LA Confidential, with surviving cop Edmund Exley vowing revenge. The same can't be said of ex-cop and mob bag man Leland Buzz Meeks, who is one of the 3 leads in The Big Nowhere, only to get shot in the prologue of Confidential. He is briefly in the film, only to be found under a house later. As for the elusive Dudley, he gets his comeuppance at the end of White Jazz, with a demented serial killer brutally mauling him and leaving him in a vegetative state. Number 4. Dr. Frock, The Relic. It's no secret that we at What Culture are fans of Peter Hyam's The Relic. The creature designed by Stan Winston is some of his best work, combining the complexity of the Predator with the outright brutal strength of his dinosaurs. What we rarely talk about is the novel upon which the film is based, which is surprisingly better than the airplane fodder you'd expect. The Relic is a fairly competent paperback by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Dr. Frock, the department head at the New York Museum, is also in the book and film. However, his role is significantly different. The film's Frock is a wheelchair-bound professor who advises Miller's graduate student. He meets his end when the monster just happens upon him, seemingly happy that his work has been proven true. Frock lives on to appear in Reliquary, the novel's sequel. It turns out, after a series of disappearances around New York City, that the creature's DNA survived, turning New York's homeless into rampaging Wrinklers. The Wrinklers, we learn, are led by Frock, who has modified the creature's mutagen to regain the use of his legs. He dies when the protagonists blow the sewers and flood them with vitamin D infused water. Yeah, don't ask. Number 3. John Rambo, First Blood. And now we come to perhaps the most legendary change from novel to film, Ted Kotcheff's adaptation of David Morrell's novel First Blood. Both the novel and the film follow John Rambo, a Vietnam vet turned homeless drifter wandering through a small Washington town. Soon the local cops playfully yet cruelly start to torture Rambo, triggering his PTSD and military training. The film and novel is much more poignant than what follows. It was a bleak meditation on the real forgotten soldier who is forced to fight an unjust war, then rebuked by his fellow countrymen. He wasn't Rambo, muscle-bound, bazooka-wielding, throat-ripping commie killer. He was John Rambo, a vulnerable veteran who had witnessed his friends die in pieces for nothing. The novel, as well as the film's original ending, was much more true to the material. In Morrell's book, Rambo has rigged the sheriff's station to blow with him inside it. He's about to light the fuse when the shot rings out. Not an explosion, but a shotgun blast to his stomach from his former military colonel Trotman. The film originally stayed true to the spirit of the end, but made Rambo's death more a self-sacrifice. Stallone, of course, had other ideas, namely arming Al-Qaeda by Part 3. Number 2, Dr. Ian Malcolm, Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, the novel, like Spielberg's Jaws, is decidedly weaker than the film. The author is more focused on the book's themes to stop and make interesting characters, and while Ian Malcolm is the same eccentric, chaos theory spouting mathematician that he is in the film, he spends most of the book ranting in pain. After the T-Rex attack, he just lays on the table of the rest of the novel, drifting in and out of consciousness and going off on long, morphine-induced rants. Then, after hearing him regurgitate the novel's themes for 400-some pages, we're told that he died between the chapters. John Hammond, too, the park's founder, is killed by a flock of Compsognathus. Spielberg and screenwriter David Cope hadn't prepared for Jeff Goldblum, who walked on the set and owned the rest of the movie. They also didn't count on Sir Richard Attenborough being so likeable, allowing him to live as well. Number 1, Charlie Arglist, The Ice Harvest. John Cusack's hapless mob lawyer almost didn't make the list because his would-be death by accident RV is almost too telegraphed. Cusack's unlikable, often stupid criminal has basically lucked his way throughout a series of near-death situations, and now his only end can be some irony-laden freak accident. And that's precisely what happened in Scott Phillips' acclaimed 2000 novel. The film went out of its way to be faithful to the novel, but critics and audiences were split on Harold Ramis's decision ultimately to let Cusack live. He's on the road with a bag full of money, and the only thing left for the character to do was die while helping an RV family siphon gas from his car. In the book and in deleted scenes, he is indeed run over and killed by the RV, but in the film, he walks back to his car unscathed, his only burden a drunken Oliver Platt to deal with. It's an understandably controversial ending to a neo-noir that any other director would have bookended with Cusack's untimely death, and while it may not be entirely successful, it was unexpectedly bold to take the happy route. And there we go, some characters that suffered horrendous fates in other media. Let us know what your favourites were down in the comments below, or your least favourites, and also if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. But for now, I have been Kirsten Ria, and I will see you in the next video.